Hey, are you thinking about getting a product manager job or transfer to those big tech companies? In today's video, we're going to share different types of PM interviews that you may need to prepare to get an offer from those big tech companies.
Hi, I'm TC. I'm a senior product manager with Amazon. I have gotten an offer from companies like Amazon, Meta, so have tons of experiences in PM interviews. I'd like to use today's video to give an introduction about product management interview and hope that can help you as you prepare for your own PM interviews.
Hi, I'm Siwei. I used to be a senior product manager at Amazon, and today I'll be hosting this video to learn more from TC about different types of PM interviews. So I know that there are different types of PM interviews. Could you give us a quick overview on how many types and how are they look like?
Yeah, so there are 5 types in general, and specifically there are product sense and design, product execution, product strategy and estimation, leadership and drive, and lastly, technical interviews. One thing to note is not all company will actually use all 5 types of PM interview to interview you. For example, if you interview for company like Meta, you will end up having product sense, product execution, and leadership and drive. You wouldn't have technical interview and product strategy and estimation. But in terms of interviewing for other companies, you might have different requirements. So the 5 types of interview here we're talking about is really help you to prepare for any PM interviews, regardless of companies. But if you have some certain company in mind in terms of, hey, I just want to prepare for Meta, I just want to prepare for Amazon, there are specific interview requirements that you may want to take into account. So those are the different types of PM interviews.
Can you then briefly explain different types of the interviews?
Sure. Let's start with product sense and design. So product sense and design is essentially testing your capability as a PM to set product direction, identify product opportunity. And this is exactly how you add most value as a PM as part of your daily job as well. Basically setting those product vision, identify a new product opportunity for your engineering team, help your engineering team to develop towards impactful products.
What would be a typical question?
Yes, for example, you may ask, hey, as the PM for iOS 15, how would you improve user experiences? Or as the PM for Uber, how would you, identify the next big opportunities? Or as the PM for Google Maps, how would you improve Google Maps functionalities? All those different, interview, which basically involve you as a certain character and then do something to improve, to grow revenue or things like that. That's all part of product sense and design questions.
Let's move on to product execution then. How does that look like?
Yeah, product execution is basically testing a PM's skills to establish metrics, setting goal for a product, and then being able to, really deep dive into the metrics when, metrics fluctuate, and then having hypothesis around how to improve the product based off the metrics that PM sees. That's basically product execution. A typical question would be, as the PM for Facebook Marketplace, how would you set goal for this product, and what are some key metrics you'd be looking at? That would be a typical PM execution questions, which is also what you do as a PM on pretty daily, weekly basis. You're looking at those metrics, and then if there's variance between this week and last week, you form hypothesis what's actually happening, you deep dive, and then you discover product insight, which you can apply to iterate your product, which is a really a very important part of your PM function.
Cool. I guess the next one is product strategy and estimation. It sounds a little bit similar to product execution. Like, what's the difference between these?
Yeah, it is pretty similar to actually product sense and execution, but product strategy is broader. Basically, you can think about product sense as, identifying, designing a new product. Product execution is about, using metrics to inform, product management decision. And then product strategy is everything else that you will encounter as a product manager. For example, like you may say, hey, as the PM for Tesla autopilot functionality, how would you price it, right? Or as the PM for example, Instagram, and you have very fierce competition from TikTok. And how would you respond to that, right? So it's broader. It's about basically how would you respond into various strategy, pricing or whatever situation as a product manager that does not fall into execution and product sense categories. So that's basically product strategy. And as part of this interview, you typically will be asked to do some estimation by math. For example, if you were asked about, hey, how would you respond to TikTok as an Instagram PM? You may be asked to actually perform estimation in terms of estimating daily active user number for TikTok. In which case, you need to make a lot of reasonable assumptions and then being able to perform that math by hand and then communicating back that to your interviewer. It's not about the actual math. Nobody expects you to actually getting the daily active user account for TikTok right. It's more about just sharing your thinking process and actually performing that math correctly. So I think that's basically as part of that, product strategy / estimation interview was really important.
That sounds a little bit similar to consulting interviews, I think.
It's actually very similar.
Okay.
Product strategy and estimation is very similar to consulting interviews. The sort of the case interview that involves analytics, you can sort of think about in that way. But product execution and product sense are very, very different from consulting interview because really testing the product aspect of it versus consulting interview is more about, mostly about strategy.
That makes sense. But at Amazon, we always have those behavior questions. We rarely have different type of assumption, strategy. So how does Amazon's interview fit into those types?
Yeah, so Amazon has a pretty unique interview format. It's really all about your past examples. And other company like Google, Meta is more about how you think on the spot. So that's the primary difference in terms of those big tech companies. But that being said, if you want to interview for those big tech companies, you should be able to think on your feet, as well as being able to give past example that help the interviewer assess your future performance at their companies. So specifically, leadership and drive is the interview format where you can actually showcase your past example. And then, you might get asked a question like, hey, tell me about the time you fail. Tell me about the time you convince a group of people about certain ideas. Or tell me about the time you deliver something under a very tight, timeline. Those sort of questions is all leadership and drive, which is, asked pretty universally across by all the tech companies. Really a matter of how much emphasis they put on it versus whether the question gets asked. So you need to definitely prepare for this, regardless which company you interview for. And specifically in terms of how you prepare for it, you use STAR, which are situation, task, action, and result. So talk about what situation you're in, what action, what goal you need to achieve, which is the task, and then being able to articulate the action you took and your mental model behind those actions, and then eventually illustrate your impact, preferably with quantifiable impact, which can really help interviewer understand the impacts. I think those are the key things you need to take into account as part of preparing for leadership and drive interviews.
So is there any type of process that tests your technical skill set? Yeah,
I think from technical, it's really hard to define, for example, if you're a developer, it's really to say, hey, coding is your technical skills. But for PM, it's more about actually identifying product opportunity, writing business plan. That's the real technical skill of product manager. But that being said, if we're talking about the coding, the technical core technical skills, there are companies like Google actually have requirement for that. They call this type of interview technical interviews. And for example, you may be asked question like, hey, how does Google search works? Or you may be asked, how would you design Uber as a product? Right? The idea of it is really about testing whether you have the high level technical skills to be able to effectively communicate and collaborate with your engineers on product and help them inform, technical decision that may actually impact your product. It's not about testing your ability to code or your ability to actually, finalize a technical design, because that's not how PM adds value. PM adds value by identifying new product opportunity and as well as, identifying the right metrics to ensure the product is in a really good shape. So that being said, you don't need to be afraid of this sort of technical interview, even though you have no technical background, is really about you having those high level technical understanding in terms of, for example, you need to understand what a load balancer is. You need to be able to understand the pro and con between SQL database and non-SQL database, high level stuff. And then you should be able to understand like a typical technical design, for example, goes from application to your server to your database. You add load balancer in between, and then talk about the various non-technical function requirements such as latency, availability, reliability, availability, all those different non-functional requirements. So again, it's not about you coding, it's really about your understanding of those concepts and being able to articulate those.
So do you have any tips for us how we prepare those interviews?
Yeah, I think a couple things here. First of all, you need to practice. Interview is all about practice. Interview itself is a skill. Like the more you practice interview, with peers or with, your other people who actually offer this sort of services, the better you get. And the more likelihood you would actually obtain an offer from those tech companies. That's, first of all. Secondly, you have to make sure that you develop the capability to think out loud. As part of actual interview. It's not about the actual recommendation, the actual, the product you come up with during those interviews that matter. It's really about your thought process. They want to understand how you think. They want to be able to follow your thinking. You can't just, be silent for 3 minutes and then say a solution. You really have to walk them through in terms of how you think. For example, if as part of, PM interview, and then you're supposed to come up with, for example, pain points for a certain product. Instead of just, being silent the entire process, can really thinking out loud, think through the user journey that the user will take for that product, and then talk about specific user journey and associated pain point. That would be a way to think out loud, right? So really need to be able to think out loud. That's a core capability as part of the PM interviews. And lastly, being justifiable is really important as well. So every time you sort of as part of the interview, you make a decision to prioritize certain user group or, decide to actually go with this recommendation instead of the other one, you have to basically justify your answers. You need to really articulate these are the reasons that you actually decide on this route versus the other route, because that's what PM does. They make justifiable assumption and decision so that they can move forward on product. So you have to constantly ask yourself, if I make this decision, what are the reasons that forces me to actually make that decision? So which is really part of this PM interview exercise that interviewer would like to see out of you as their potential PM. So again, in summary, practice thinking out loud, and then be able to justify every decision you make as part of PM interview. Those are the 3 key things I would highly recommend as you prepare for your PM interviews.
We will share more about interview skills and product management in our future videos. So if you're interested in our content, please subscribe.
Smash that like button.
And turn on the notification. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.